Welcome into Varsity Vibe. I am your host, Alyssa Orange. Thank you so much for being with us, as you always do. I have another great conversation to share with you. And really, this is kind of personal for me as well. Over the last year, I've been able to be a part of the GAC, the Great American Conference, which is an NCAA Division II conference with 6 schools in Arkansas and 6 schools in Oklahoma, but be a part of the broadcast team for their championships from softball to volleyball, soccer, basketball. It's been a lot of fun over the last year being a part of it. And I got to sit down and talk a little bit with their commissioner, Will Prewitt. Prewitt became the commissioner when the GAC started in 2010 and has helped lead it into what it is right now. And I wanted to pick his brain about what it's like seeing the Division II ranks grow, how the transfer portal and NIL has changed things in the game, and just like the recruiting and the talent in the state of Arkansas specifically, that a lot of these high school athletes are going to play at universities in his conference. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with GAC Commissioner Will Prewitt. You became the commissioner in 2010 when the GAC was created and started. What was it like to just take over a brand new conference first and foremost?
Listen, it's one of those things. It's probably, someday when I retire, it's going to feel like one of the my biggest professional accomplishments. I don't know that I would ever want to do it again, but it was so much fun. To really have a hand in everything, and this is something that some people say, hey, it's only small college sports, Division II sports, whatever, but it's so personal to me because I grew up literally in small college athletics, on a campus. My first job was working stat crew, sitting in a booster seat so I could sit at the scores table at 7 years old. What we do really means a lot to me. Athletics are super important to our 12 member institutions for enrollment, for campus life, for just so many reasons. And really to have a hand in something that was new. I think it's been a great fit, having the Arkansas and Oklahoma schools together. The Gulf South was a great conference that our Arkansas members came from, but they always felt like they were a little estranged from the rest of the league on the wrong side of the Mississippi River. And most of our Oklahoma schools coming from the Lone Star Conference also felt like a little bit of an outlier. And I'm really proud of what we built over the last 15, 16 years.
Yeah, you have 6 from Arkansas, 6 from Oklahoma, and it's a perfect balance. But maybe focusing a little bit on the Arkansas schools for a moment. There's a lot of exposure there and a lot of talent. It feels like Harding's in everything in every sport. It feels like, you had Southern Arkansas just win your softball championship. Really solid programs and facilities that are out there for high school kids and transfers to be a part of.
Now, if you look around, I think there's some great student athlete experiences to be had on our campuses. Obviously, I think we've been really successful across the board, but in the Division II world, we're in a pretty high-ranked district. The MIAA is a great conference on standing. The Lone Star, the Gulf South, where much of our membership came from, along with the LSC. So there's great Division II programs that we've kind of had to elbow our way into competing with, and seeing. I think we were in like 13 or 14 national semifinals, and then Arkansas Tech broke through with the national golf championship. Harding won the national football championship, which I think really helps your exposure. It helps your perception, but for a student athlete, I think Division II and particularly the Great American Conference are it's a tremendous option. Now, we really try to do a great job of making really a balanced athletic experience. You've broadcast a number of our championships. I think you can attest that it's pretty high level athletics, but you also have some opportunities to be a regular student and be involved in other things on campus. The partial financial aid model allows us to help student athletes financially with athletic aid that can be stacked with other aid. And this is going to that absolute highest level. I think that there's some great things that if you come to a GAC or Division II school to compete.
Yeah, when you look around, how has it changed the landscape since 2010? And obviously, there's been transfer portal, and everyone's talking about NIL these days. Um, but how has that impacted much of the Division II level and the GAC specifically?
Listen, I think it feels like we've had more change in the past 6 years than in the last 60 years of college athletics. And I started in college athletics in my first job was at Appalachian State. I'm 1996, and it felt like the model really didn't change that much. Then we had COVID, and then we had we run into the portal and NIL, and it feels like the reality it changes, not year to year, almost month to month. Yeah, it's changed things quite a bit at our level. Some sports, it feels like it's a little bit more, with some student athletes transactional, which I've got mixed feelings about. I can't feel bad about a student athlete who financially can better themselves, but I really am afraid sometimes that we lose some of the just some of the relationship type things. Those relationships that you have with teammates for a lifetime, or your coach for a lifetime, or having a great career and leaving a legacy. But we still really have a lot of student athletes that come to our schools and as either a junior college transfer or transferring back home from a 4 year school that they're on campus 2 or 3 years, they get that degree. High school student athletes that stay for 4 years, but it really has changed. Yeah, probably not as much as top level, but it is a different reality. Unfortunately, with and again, I'm not sure that it's unfortunately, but I think it's become a little bit more transactional with some of our student athletes, but we just want to keep plugging along and offer a great experience that you know, it's great if we have NBA or NFL or MLB student athletes, but I really measure we're doing our job. Listen, one of my favorite things is when I officiate high school football on Friday nights, and I talk to those Henderson graduates or Arkansas Tech graduates or UAN or SAU, whatever the school is, and it feels like I run into those almost every Friday night. They're like, "Hey, I played in the GAC. It was such an awesome experience. Being able to compete or get the financial aid was life changing for me. So, that's where I measure our success, not necessarily, how many people we send on to the absolute highest levels of sport."
I was going to ask you about that because that's such a unique thing that you have where you do officiate high school football around the state. You live in Dardanelle, and some of these high school athletes that you've watched play over the years go on and have careers at your GAC institutions. How cool is that to be able to see those athletes have success in high school and then turn around and have success in the GAC with recruiting and all of that in the state of Arkansas?
I think it's a lot of fun. I think from a fan perspective, it really helps GAC football when we have those student athletes that people are familiar with through high school football on Friday nights. Because if some places it feels like it may not be as big of a deal, but hey, Friday night lights are still a very big deal in the state of Arkansas. And I just love a moment that kind of hit me. Braden Jay's running all over Colorado School of Mines at the national championship game a few years ago, and it's like it's like, hey, this no surprise to me. I saw this kid do this at Cabot, or whatever number of student athletes. Got it's rare that I go to a game on Saturday that I'm not seeing the kid that I've officiated their games on Friday nights, and that's that really is a lot of fun to kind of have that connection. And Alyssa's, hey, again, I don't want to badmouth the absolute highest levels, but I I love local and regionally based sport. I grew up in a small town east from Kentucky. Life revolved around the Williamsburg Yellow Jackets and the Cumberland College Indians. So I just
Yeah.
love even if it's now officiate football on Friday night. I love going and supporting all of our Dardanelle teams locally here in town. When I'm not doing something GAC, I can't believe that I'm getting ready to be a high school sports parent in about 4 or 5 months. So a lot of it's hand in hand. I think just kind of that local. The players on the field, whether it's the high school level, the college level, because there are so many close relationships from where I think about Arkansas Tech. You have kids from across the river valley that go to whether it's softball camp or volleyball camp, football camp, and these kids, they know the student athletes, and when they go to games, you know them and their parents know who those kids are, and that's just something I love about working at this level.
It is a lot of fun. And speaking of football, you mentioned Harding winning that national championship back in 2023. They lost this past season in the championship game in 2025 to Ferris State. But what was that moment like for you to see one of your schools win a national championship?
Yeah, it, it was a great feeling. It's
Yeah.
something that uh, I think there was a lot of work to get there. Obviously, Harding's the one that carried that across the line, but you can't make it through the national playoffs if you've not been tested through the regular season. And when the league started, there were some naysayers on the national level and even regional level within Division II. But I think about people like Todd Knight at Waukesha, Scott Maxfield at Henderson, Coach Huckabee got things really rolling at Harding, Steve Mullins at Arkansas Tech back in the day. Hud Jackson, you just stepped down at UAF as a coach and administrator. Really, has kind of set things. Kind of helped shape football in this conference. Bill Kettle, built a really good program at Southern Arkansas, and if you can't go through a week league and then survive the playoffs, so
Yeah.
I felt like there was just so many things that came together there.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then, it also had to be cool, the Battle of the Ravine getting a lot of attention nationally on ESPN with Reese Davis giving it a shout out for a college game day potential appearance and coming up on what I believe the 100th year anniversary, is that correct?
2 years from now, game
2
day,
years. Okay, yeah.
Battle of the
Yeah.
Ravine 100, two
Yeah.
years.
I mean,
Um,
how cool is that too?
Alyssa, I joke with people. Harrison Wassata is one of the funnest parts of my job. It's also one of the more complicated parts of my job. There's so many things, just kind of unique. Most of it's good, but when you have two schools that are literally across the street from each other, and just such a unique, special rivalry that um, if if you're a football fan in the state of Arkansas and you've never been to that game, you really need to go. It's quite the experience. Get there early, watch the team walk across the street from their locker room to the opposing field. Um, there's nothing like it in college football, and it really is. as someone that's a college football junkie at all levels, you really need to come out and see it.
Speaking of the connection, again, drawing that parallel from high school and high school athletics to the GAC, Arkansas Tech just hiring Coach Fimple as their women's head coach. Just another pipeline there for Coach Fimple to get that opportunity, which is going to be an exciting ad there for the Golden Suns.
Yeah, listen, that's one of those really cool full circle moments. Knowing that Coach Bemple was a part of when Arkansas Tech women's basketball and Coach Joe Foley, absolute coaching legend in this state. He was a part of that staff, and they really had things up and rolling, and the tremendous career he's had at the high school level, and now to see him back at Arkansas Tech, it's such a really cool full circle moment. And I think that he's really going to be able to capitalize on his ties within the state. You look at a lot of the most successful GAC teams ever. That Harding football national championship team. They've got a kid from Harrison at quarterback, a star running back from Cabot. A lot of Arkansas kids on their offensive line. Southwestern Oklahoma State in 2018 was national women's basketball runner-up, and they started 5 small-town Oklahoma kids. Kitch Knight at Washita every year. He's always, virtually all Arkansas kids on that depth chart. I don't want to disparage kids from outside of our footprint of Arkansas, Oklahoma, kind of North Texas, North Louisiana, but yeah, I think it really does create some excitement when it's those kids that are local, that they have family ties, they understand the rivalries, and I think it's going to be really cool to see what Coach Bimple does now. He's filling some really big shoes in Dave Wilvers, who had a remarkable career at Arkansas Tech, but it's going to be fun to track. One of our better sports, GAC women's basketball. It's really good basketball if you've not been out and seen it.
Yeah, it was really fun to be able to cover the women and the men in Fort Smith for their tournament this past March. When you look at high school athletes today who are going through the recruiting process, who want to play at the next level, what's your advice as a commissioner of the GAC for these kids who want to compete at the next level?
The big thing that I would say is don't get hung up on a label. And whether you know, find find a coach that you feel comfortable with, that you're going to develop as whether you want to move on to a Division 1 program at some point, whether it's you want to find some place to stay and be 4 years, find that coach regardless of the level that and program that you feel like is a fit, a campus that you fit on, someplace that you can develop. If you keep moving forward, you find that place that you can blossom and grow. You know, there's great things ahead for you, whether that's potentially to move on, hopefully you can graduate from, if you attend a GAC school, graduate from that school, become a part of that community, can come back and contribute as an alum. But really, it's don't get hung up on the label. Find that place where you fit, whether it's Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, NAI.
Yeah, so when you look at the GAC, then that's some great advice. Um, Spring is about to wrap up. We're heading into the postseason for the spring sports, and then we have the summer before football and the fall and winter sports get picking back up at the end of 2026. How do you look at each year and want to improve? Like what's the next step for the GAC in your eyes with a new year coming up in 2026?
With I think moving forward, you always in this landscape. You don't have. It's wild how much just from 2010 when I started. And it was a big deal to make sure that you were all over the traditional media, the newspaper, local television, radio. It's such a fragmented marketplace right now that as a conference, we have to keep working to make sure that we're able to get our own message out with our GAC Sports Network, working with our schools on making big decisions on whether keeping and printing those broadcasts, that whether we want to ever put those behind a paywall, keep those for free for greater exposure, trying to enhance our championships. There's always little things when I go to our events like, hey, we can do this better, but essentially just these little things, how do we expose our conference? How do we expose our 12 universities, and how do we make that student athlete experience better?
Yeah, absolutely. Always trying to look ahead and for bigger and better days than the ones before. And I tell you what, it has been a pleasure to be a part of the broadcast team with you guys and get to learn more about the GAC over this last year. And I thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. And I thank you for taking the time and talking with me today.
Hey, Alyssa, thanks for what you do on our network. You've been a great addition, and now really appreciate the chance to talk GAC sports.
I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with GAC Commissioner Will Prewitt as much as I did. Great information there, especially for high school kids that want to continue to play at that collegiate level in Arkansas and in Oklahoma. Such a great organization. It's been really fun for me to be a part of it over the last year. If you would like to, we always encourage you to sign up for our newsletter at varsityvibearkansas.com, as well as follow us on social media. That is Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. That great content over there as we get to the postseason for the high school sports in the state of Arkansas very soon, as well as make sure to subscribe to our YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, I'm your host, Alyssa Orange, and I will see you next time.